drum roll, let me introduce our speaker for tonight. A.R.Siders, PhD, JD, is an assistant professor, the Disaster Research Center, Climate Science and Policy Hub, the Biden School of Public Policy and Geography, Spatial Science. Did I get that, my mouth around all of that?
It's definitely a mouthful, yeah.
It is. And you go by Siders, right?
I do, yep. I use my
That's
last name as a nickname.
Is your nickname. There you go. Is an interdisciplinary lawyer and scientist exploring the practice of coastal relocation as a strategy to adapt to global climate change. Sider received her BA in biology in 2007 and her JD in 2010 from Harvard University and her PhD in 2018. You've been in school a lot, from Stanford University. Her doctoral work used natural language processing and machine learning to explore concepts of adaptive capacity to climate change in social groups. Prior to Stanford, Siders served as a presidential management fellow with the US Navy, working on international engagement in Africa, task force energy, and task force climate change, and is an associate director of the Sabine Center for Climate Change Law at Columbia University, where she worked on post-Sandy recovery and storm hardening policies. So we have a lot of interest and excitement, and we are delighted to have you. And drum roll, take it away.
Thanks. So, and thank you for that really lovely introduction. Yeah, so as Jill's mentioned, I'm a professor at the University of Delaware. I wear a lot of hats because I work on climate change, and as many of you know, that doesn't fit nicely into any one discipline. So I'm lucky enough to be at UD, where they let me cross across a lot of departments, centers, and now a hub. So tonight, I'm primarily going to talk about the Climate Change Hub and try to introduce you to what we're doing at UD and some of the new initiatives we're trying to get off the ground. But I'm also happy to talk about coastal climate adaptation in Delaware or any other things like that you'd like to talk about. So today, we're not going to focus on my research. I'm going to focus on this hub and what we're doing. But as I say, happy to do that. So with that, I'm going to do the usual academic thing and share some slides, because hopefully these pictures will be more interesting. And if you have questions at any point, please feel free to put things in the chat or to just unmute and say something. Happy to talk about things as we go along. So we are the Gerard J. Mangone Climate Change Science and Policy Hub, which, as you can imagine, is a hub named by committee. So we got all of the words in there. So we have a bit of a mouthful of a name. We generally just go by the Climate Hub at UD. And we are, well, you can see our list. We are new. So we're in our second year, but I prefer to say 15 months because I think that makes it a little bit, 2 years sounds like we're a little bit further along than we really are. So we're at 15 months right now. So we're still kind of figuring out what we're doing. And that's actually one of the reasons that this discussion tonight is so exciting, is that I'm hoping to hear from you all what you'd like us to be doing and how you'd like to engage with us, what you'd like to see us do. We are in the midst of putting together a strategic plan. So this is actually something we're thinking about a lot right now, is what are we going to be doing as a hub? We are university-wide. So my co-director and I'm the policy side, she's the science side of our climate change policy and science hub. So we do take this interdisciplinarity really seriously. And we have representatives from our faculty across all of the colleges at UD. So we are really trying to engage across university-wide initiatives. I'll talk about that a little bit more. We're pretty student-focused. This is a picture of our climate scholars. We have 52 students who are undergraduates. They're freshmen and sophomores who are really interested in climate change. I'll talk more about that program in a minute too. But we're doing a lot of work with them to improve the curriculum on campus in terms of what climate change classes we offer and how we train students to think about climate change. But we're also really focused on out of classroom experiences. So trying to set up internships with different programs, trying to get them experiential learning opportunities, volunteering in the community, and building soft skills they might not be getting in class, things like science communication and outreach. We support research, so we're supporting faculty across the university, of course, in doing this. And then we're trying to build more networks and community. And if anyone's ever on campus on the green, that's us in the bottom right-hand corner. We're on the 3rd floor of the Robinson Hall building in the College of Earth, Ocean, and the Environment. Very nicely giving us some space up there. And let's see, advance this. There we go. Okay, so I just threw this in at the last minute because I realized I should mention that, nope, my slides are auto advancing. Okay, there we go. So one of the things we're setting up now as a new hub is sort of a structure to build these networks and work with other people. And so we have a working group, which is a board of people within the university from, we have now representatives, we have 35 members from every college, and we're working on getting people from every unit and as many of the staff offices as we can to help think about climate change initiatives on campus. So these are the group who's actually doing the work. So when we put on Earth Day events, when we do curriculum redesigns, when we think about hosting big conferences, these are the people we can turn to help us learn about what's happening in their colleges and in their units, but then also could help us put on bigger initiatives. Then we have a partners board. And I've been trying to note down because many of the partners that you all represent or the organizations that you represent are actually part of our partners board. So Delaware Interfaith Power and Light, for example, the Sierra Club, we already have some connections with these organizations, and we're building partnerships with others organizations. We've sort of started small while we figure out what exactly this board does and what we want it to do, but we're looking for more ways to expand. So if this is an area where you're, after this presentation, you really want to partner with us, let me know, because we are seeking for more partners to try to engage in these things. And the partners board is really helping us think about how we as a hub can help the interface between the University of Delaware and partners in the community, because we recognize that the university isn't always easy to navigate. This is my 4th year here at the university, and I'm still finding people who do things that I never knew they do, and I'm still finding resources on campus I never knew existed. So I can only imagine if it's hard for me to navigate within the university, how much harder it is for anyone else to try to navigate it from externally. And one of the things we hope the hub can do is be a resource to connect people on campus. So for example, people reach out sometimes when they need to find an expert on a particular topic, or they're looking for someone who can partner on a grant application, or they need something done in their community. We're a place where we can help try to make those connections. And then we have an executive board, which is really the leaders at University of Delaware who are helping us as a hub try to grow and think about how we fit into the university ecosystem. All right, so some of the things that we do, like I said, we're building a lot of networks. So we have 150 plus faculty and staff across all of the colleges on campus who do research or teaching or service related to climate change partnerships. The pie chart at the top just kind of breaks down around the different colleges that they're in. Not surprisingly, there's a lot of people coming out of the College of Earth, Ocean, Environment, but we also have people in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Health Sciences, Arts and Sciences, Engineering, Business, and Public Policy. So really, across all of these campuses, we have a lot of people who are working on climate change related issues. One of the things we're doing then is we're setting up some working groups around topical areas where those faculty can learn more about what they're doing and hopefully find overlaps that we can do some more innovative research coming out of the university. So we have working groups, for example, on polar science. That's my co-director, Dana Verone, down at the bottom there in Antarctica, working on some issues. We have a working group on urban heat island effect. Also some partnerships we're working on with urban heat in Wilmington. Coming up, we're just starting up some new projects to look at urban heat in Wilmington. And then we're planning to put together another working group looking at flooding in Delaware because we've had in several of our partners have expressed interest, and we have a large number of faculty who are interested in thinking about flooding in relation to climate change, and specifically looking at Delaware. What are some of the solutions we could try to come up with in Delaware? So one of the things we're doing as a hub is just organizing these working groups around topics where we see a need to bring faculty together, or maybe faculty and partners to try to develop things. Yeah, as I mentioned, the heat and the flood risk. We're also trying to bring together a bunch of resources. So both for on-campus and off-campus partners. We're still not sure exactly what all the resources are people would like to see. So if you have ideas of resources you would like to see us provide, this is a place where we can try to do that. On campus, for example, one of the things that we have had requested is that there are a lot of modules and classes and syllabi and things that exist and trainings that exist for climate change. And so could we sort of compile them and create a reference for educators, both at UD, at other universities, maybe even K through 12, who are thinking about how can they incorporate climate change into their classrooms. So we're going to try to start compiling some resources like that. So if people are interested in how do we conduct a training, how do we, what's out there already, they can come to us to find those types of things. These are our climate scholars. So this is one of the big initiatives we've been doing and is probably the most fun, just because engaging with undergraduates is always part of the fun part of the job. So we have 52 undergraduates. They're all freshmen and sophomores right now. They come from 21 different majors across all 8 colleges. So we really have a breadth. It's an enrichment program that they add on top of their majors. Gosh, sorry, my slides are all over the place today. So it doesn't replace their major. They can major in anything that they want and then become a climate scholar on top of that. So not surprisingly, we have a number of students who are environmental studies or geography majors and then add on a climate scholars program. But we also have students from fashion design who are interested in how we think about sustainable fashion and how we revise fast fashion. We have people from the engineering department who want to think more about sustainability on top of their regular engineering classes. We have students from, I don't know, yeah, from every college that you can imagine. We have a student in K through 12 education who really wants to think about climate change in education. She wants to go on to be a teacher. So a lot of these students are interested in opportunities to expand this. They take a few classes to sort of get a core familiarity with climate science, but not too many classes because primarily this is an extracurricular or a co-curricular activity. So what we're really trying to provide through this experience is to provide research opportunities, internships where they can work with partner organizations or they can work in the community, and then capstone projects. None of them are seniors yet, so we have another year to figure out what the capstone projects look like exactly, and we'll see what the students want to make of them. But the idea is that they will be combining sort of their major and what they're learning there with what they're learning about climate change to develop hopefully a project that is about a climate change solution. So they'll bring those things together in a final project for this. And then we also try to provide opportunities for them to engage with faculty and engage with other organizations. So they have a weekly tea and cookies where they meet with faculty members. We've also brought in some partner organizations. Phil Smith actually came and presented to the students at one of our tea and cookies things. So we have other people who also come in and present to our students, and it's a great way for them to get some one-on-one time with people who are working in this area. We're looking to set up more internships and to do sort of a matched internship idea. So if people have organizations that are looking for internships, we potentially have students who want to do internships, and we're hoping to provide a matching service to partner organizations and students who are looking for those experiences. We're also setting up some alumni events to try to get our alumni who are in climate careers to help students who are interested in going into a career in climate change understand what a career in climate change could look like. Right, because there aren't often jobs that are just labeled as climate expert. It's so often some other job where you then work on climate change issues, and we want to help students figure out how to navigate that space. So we're hoping to develop more alumni, more job prospects, get more climate change representation at our university job fairs, things like that, to help students see, even if they're climate scholars or not, help them see a career working in this space on solutions. We also do a lot of community engagement. So this is an image from Coast Day. These are several of our climate scholars who went and helped clean up trash on the coast. They're looking for other volunteering opportunities. Our students are actually pretty excited about volunteering, and they're really interested in getting in, like they want to make a difference. And so even when it's something as direct as cleaning up trash on a coast, they're excited because they like the idea that it's tangible, right? It's something that they know they've done at the end of the day, and they really like that. This is one of the Earth Day events. The students were really proactive in helping create Earth Day at University of Delaware last year and making it a success. We're hoping to do something as big or even bigger this year for Earth Day. Some of the events we see on things like Earth Day are that I thought were pretty innovative. They have like a clothing swap where the students bring in their clothes and then do a giant swap right there on campus to try to combat this idea of don't go out and just buy new clothes. Why not, right? Trade with someone who has your style and size. Let's try to repurpose those. And one of our faculty members in sustainable fashion is really interested about setting up a mobile, what does she call it? Basically a mobile fixing station. So bring in your old worn clothes and she will show you how to either repurpose them or how to preserve them and give them a longer life so that you don't have to just go out and buy new things all the time. We keep trying to we're trying to figure out ways to give the students t-shirts. And one of our ideas right now is we don't want them to buy new t-shirts every year, right? Because we want this to be more sustainable. So our current idea is to give the students one shirt and then to design either iron-on patches or like iron-on emblems. And hopefully the students themselves would design these for different events. And then every time they go to a different event, they could get a different patch or a different iron-on patch. And so at the end of their career as a 4 years in scholars, they would have numerous different patches all over their t-shirts, sort of like a Letterman's jacket idea in a t-shirt, right? So they'd have a new thing they could add on to show that they were participated in, right? Like 3 different Earth Day events or 3 different things like this. So yeah, so thanks for the recommendation on the shirts. Yeah. So we're trying to find ways to engage the students and let them express themselves, but at the same time, not contribute to additional consumption. Anyway, and then when Phil came and spoke to the tea and cookies, he showed off the En-ROADS, which is a climate model where you can look at various different, like, what if we banned coal, what if we invested in nuclear, what if we invested in renewables, and you can see its effect on greenhouse gases and temperature. The students really loved it. So we're planning in the spring, we're actually going to host a 1-credit seminar where we train some of the climate scholars on this particular model. And our plan is that we will start continuing to train students, the scholars, over the next 4 years. We'll keep training different classes of scholars to be able to present this model. And then we're going to work with some grad students and faculty at the College of Education to try to develop a module where these students could help partner with K through 12 teachers to actually introduce this model and teach climate change in K through 12 or maybe 8 through 12 classrooms. But also these scholars could then present it to community organizations. They could present it in Delaware, like college classes. So any professor here who wants, a 1-day class on climate policy, these students would then be trained and have a sort of 1-day curriculum that they could sort of walk through in an innovative way. So we're hoping to build this into a way that helps the scholars not only learn the model for themselves, but also then have a tool that they can use to engage with other organizations. So, for example, my hope is that someday in the next year or so, one of your green drinks events could be climate scholars presenting on the En-ROADS model, if there's interest or things like that. So we're looking for those kinds of opportunities for this. At the very bottom here, I've gotten links to our events. We host several events that are, a lot of which are public facing. We haven't quite figured out how to spread the word about our public facing events. So at the moment they live on our website, but we're trying to figure out better ways to advertise that. I think soon we will have a listserv where people will be able to sign up to receive news from us about these events and about things that are happening on campus. Right now, the listserv we have is very much internal to UD. We want to build more external facing communications, but it's just, like I said, 15 months in, we're still sorting through some of these logistics. So there will be more forthcoming there. We also do, as I mentioned, we're trying to engage across campus. So we're trying to do some innovative things that bring in not just the climatologists, right, and the students in marine science, but also how do we engage more broadly across campus. So this is just a screenshot from one of our recent eco-entrepreneurship design sprint. So we partnered with the Ratcliffe Eco Entrepreneurship Fellows, REEF, and this is from the business school, right? So these are people who think about how you take entrepreneurial ideas and how do you approach that to climate solutions. And so for the people from No Plastic Delaware, for example, like one of the problems that the students were supposed to solve was actually marine trash, and plastic in particular. So they had 48 hours basically to come up with a solution, create a 3-minute pitch, and then they give the pitch and they compete for cash prizes. So the prize-winning team walks away with $1,000. And ideally, they then take classes in eco-entrepreneurship that are being offered at UD, and they have the opportunity to partner with experts in the industry and to try to actually build out some of those ideas. We also had a problem on killer heat, which intriguingly, we had a high school class from Florida sign up. This design sprint occurs every year. It's open to members of the public. If there are people who are interested in entering a design sprint next year, it is open to community members as well as to students on campus and even to high schoolers. And actually, our killer heat competition was won by a high school team from Florida this year who designed a product basically to replace turf for athletes. And so they had a novel solution on how to replace turf that would not cause as much heat stress for athletes who are competing in hot weather on this AstroTurf. So it was a really interesting idea and a very cool presentation. So we're trying to do more partnerships with organizations or with efforts like this to incorporate climate change, because they can do eco anything, but the more we can make it about climate change and thinking about climate solutions, and the more we can introduce students to mindsets like entrepreneurship. So there's skill sets about entrepreneurship, but there's also that just problem solving mind space that is really important for our students to have, to think about this as a solvable problem. We're doing a lot on the teaching front. The Hub, we funded 14 new classes. So those are some of the classes that are new at UD now that have a climate change focus. We have one on climate refugees and forced migration, on textile trading and sourcing, measuring greenhouse gas emissions, local government climate policy, I think is going to be a really important one. Other people have added climate change modules to their existing classes, and we're really trying to encourage this. Because, for example, Introduction to Engineering has 800 students. If that has even 1 week that's focused on climate change and sustainability, that reaches a lot of students, right? So we're encouraging a lot of classes are sort of intro level to have a climate change component so that we can reach more of them. as well as having these specialty upper level classes where students can really dig into an area that matches their major and their passion with climate change issues. We have some new majors, and we're going to have even more new majors coming out that are climate change related. The university also has a new Office of Sustainability that's standing up. So we're going to be working with them on which of the majors become sustainability and which of them become climate change. We're still, that's going to be negotiated at a later point, but we're going to see a lot more innovation in those areas, I think. Oh, and that middle one is from our first annual presidential teach-in on climate change and sustainability. We're going to have our second one this March, where we kind of highlight some of the innovations that are occurring in climate change education on campus. One of the areas I'm really excited about is actually just met with a climate change psychologist who thinks about how to support student mental health in classes on climate change. Because as I'm sure you all know, this can be a really depressing area to work in, and it can be really depressing for our students to engage in, especially when they're, a lot of them come in thinking that they're going to learn about solutions, and instead they learn about a lot of the challenges. And we don't want them to burn out, and we don't want to add to any mental health burdens. So how can we teach these classes in a way that provides mental and emotional health support for our students while engaging them in this climate crisis? And how we can provide support to our partners and our faculty so we also don't burn out in this space while we're engaging it. So I'm really excited about some innovations that we're going to try to pursue in that area. We have a lot of graduate students. So we funded 11 graduate student research projects, research enhancement projects. So this isn't like a full fellowship for a graduate student. This is a graduate student who wants to do an extra project, right? They want to take on something. They want to spend more time on a research boat. They want to pursue something independent of their dissertation. And we have some really cool ones. One of my favorites is in the middle here, swamp tigers and how climate change is going to affect their distribution in Bangladesh, which mostly just because photos of tigers are also amazing. And I'm sorry I don't have any in this presentation. I really should. We have others working on like trees and how trees are absorbing CO2. And the effect on birds you can see on satellite for crop modeling. The students are doing a lot of really interesting work. I can share this link, but we have a link to a playlist. Actually, we asked the students to create 1-minute videos about their research. And we're going to try and do this with more graduate students. We now have 41 students at UD who are graduate students at UD who are working on climate change related issues. We want to encourage more of them to create 1-minute or 3-minute videos about their research as a way of helping spread the news about the good stuff that's being done, but also as a way to help them build their climate communication skills, right? As an academic, I know it's easy to spend 45 minutes talking about my research. It's actually really, really hard to spend 1 minute talking about my research. And so this is a skill we want to encourage the graduate students to build. We're actually planning to create a 3-minute thesis competition. That's an international big competition. So hopefully our graduate students could eventually participate in that. To start with, though, we're just going to run an internal competition where we ask the students to do a 3 minutes on their research, and we'll see how we can design that. But I think this will be a good communication tool for them long term. Some of the exciting projects they're doing. This is actually our sustainable fashion faculty member, Kelly Cobb, there wearing the virtual reality headset at a UD and DC day, while Dana and I are helping walk her through it. And this is research by Joy McCusker, who actually has a virtual reality 3D vision of how sea level rise will affect South Bowers Beach in Delaware. Excuse me. And she's using this visualization to see how it affects people's perceptions of climate change, how it affects their interest in climate adaptation. And it's a really cool visualization, and it's a really cool way of thinking about how technology can help influence people's willingness to engage in these issues. She's a second-year PhD student, so we'll see more from her in her dissertation, I'm sure. We also have several students who are working on crops and crop yields. Dongyang Wei has done some really fantastic work thinking about how food production is going to shift, but then also thinking about what do you do in response to that, right? You're not just going to convince everyone to eat crickets. So how do you make that switch, or how do you make people decide that this variety of rice is an okay replacement for that variety, or what is a replacement for these foods as they become no longer available? So that was, I hope, not too much, but also a lot, I realize. And I'm sorry, my slides keep auto advancing, so I keep losing track of where we are with them. But what I really want to, I just threw out a lot of what the hub is doing. We're doing a lot. We're trying to figure out exactly where we're going to focus in the future. The things I'd really love to spend, the next half hour or however long with you all is thinking about, are there areas where you'd like to see more overlap from the hub? Are there areas where we could help support the work that you're doing? we've already included, and we plan to continue to include, the green drinks agendas in our newsletter internally, because I'd love to see more UD people showing up here. And I just want to point out that Tess Dofinger is hanging out. She's a postdoc at the Disaster Research Center, who's here right now working on flooding and coastal climate adaptation. But we hope to see more even UD people here, I think, in the future. But yeah, I'm going to stop there because I'd love to hear your thoughts, reactions, and maybe suggestions for what we could do in the future.
Fabulous. I guess how's the best way to handle this? Shall we just raise hands? And if I don't see your hand up, just holler. I see Clem's hand up. You want to say what you want to say, Clem? You can mention your New York Times article as well, if you would. Unmute, please.
Well, I shared it with Siders, excuse me. But it was first time I've seen an article that looked at individual Americans, mainly elderly or near retirement, who were taking account of climate risk in where they settled or remain settled or remain unsettled. Anyway, if anyone wants to, it's in today's New York Times, I think, maybe yesterday's. But there was one couple, two physicians who were especially diligent in their research and ultimately decided to locate in Nashville, North Carolina, as a good place to get away from climate risk. But my interest, Siders, is, well, I have several interests, but one of the things I noticed in your pie chart of the relationship among different schools of the university and the center, there's very little relationship with the Lerner School. And I'm particularly interested in the Weinberg Center for Corporate Governance, which of course exists because Delaware is where most S&P 500 companies are chartered. And 27% of the state's budget comes from franchise fees paid by corporations and limited partnerships and other companies that choose to make Delaware their corporate home port, because Delaware it has laws that benefit them. And I'm interested in how boards of directors of companies, including S&P 500 companies, do or don't evaluate climate risk. And it seems to me, and I've raised this point at Princeton as well, that I've advocated that Princeton's Board of Trustees have a regular quarterly meeting with a committee of climate experts at Princeton who can help inform the trustees of the university as to how the trustees of the university should manage their resources, including their investment assets, and whom they should choose to invest in or not invest in, taking account of the expertise of the university's own faculty. And it seems to me that the Lerner School and the Weinberg Center, given the outsized role of Delaware in corporate governance in the world, not just in the United States, that your center could usefully make contact with the head of the Weinberg Center and begin, if you haven't already, a dialogue as to how the education programs of the Weinberg Center on corporate governance could take advantage of the expertise at the university, including at your center, that could help inform the climate risk assessment and management responsibilities of boards of directors of companies and partners of limited liability companies that are chartered in Delaware.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. I think, and it's, by the way, it's so nice to put a face to the emails, to the name. I think you're absolutely right. So thank you for the recommendation for the Weinberg Center. We have some, so we do have some members from the Lerner School on our working group, and we're trying to build further connections. It's also an area where We are hoping that the university will make some strategic hires in the future. Personally, I'd love to see some more hires in climate change, finance, and governance in the Learner School. Sadly, they haven't left it up to me, but this is certainly an area where I think we can advocate for more in the future. So thank you for the recommendation for the Weinberg Center. I think there's a huge role to play on the business and the sustainability side of things, and I'm definitely trying to make those connections. And I think that the business school in general also has a really strong responsibility, right, to train future leaders to be thinking about sustainability and to be thinking about the environmental and corporate, social responsibility in our investments. Which, the other point you made about the UD's investments is also an area where, at least I'll speak for me personally, maybe not for the hub, but personally, I think the hub will want to facilitate some conversations long term about UD's finances and investments. I don't know that the university or that the hub is ready to have conversations about total divestment, but I think that's an area where I'd like to see us think about in the future, or at least think about funding transparency and think more about how we can pursue more sort of responsible investments, or how we define environmentally responsible investments at a university level. And so I definitely hope that the hub will play a role in those conversations and providing the kind of expertise that you're describing.
Well, I'll just make this one further point, and that is, I don't see any possibility of the Delaware legislature changing the law regarding the standard of fiduciary responsibility of corporate directors under Delaware law. Zero chance, unless and until the education of corporate directors proceeds much further down the road with your help to help make the point that those companies that are most aggressive about understanding and managing climate risk will actually be the companies that pay the best financial returns to their investors. And it would be totally consistent with a good fiduciary management to have that really excellent ability to assess and manage climate risk.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Ruth Ann, I think you were the next one with your hand up wherever you went.
Yes, I'm actually sitting in my car now because it got noisy in my office. Yeah, I'm very, very interested in refining our capability of working with communities. So community engaged efforts, especially trauma-informed community engagement. I'm wondering who at UD is becoming a specialist or a consultant in that area. As the middle class continues to shrink and the poor class increases, there's so much fear that we really need help.
No, so I don't have any names off the top of my head, and I'm going to have to look into that for you, Ruth Ann, because I think that's an area where I think it's really important. We have some community engagement happening at the university, but I don't know who's specializing in the trauma-informed community engagement. And it's a conversation that I've heard happening in several places at the university. So for example, the Disaster Research Center, right, where often we're working in immediately the aftermath of a major disaster. There's a lot of discussion there. So possibly based on those, so because I sit in the Disaster Research Center, that's one of the areas I know the best. So I would say maybe Dr. Sarah DeYoung and her work with communities immediately in the aftermath of disasters. But I want to look around a bit more because I think we probably have others. And this is an area where I'm just starting to learn about some of the expertise we have in community, like climate anxiety and some of the other trauma engagement on other elements that might be relevant here. But I think that's something. It's also some random reason that we very much want more community engagement from our faculty and from our students. We are trying to figure out the best way to do that, because it's one thing to send off a bunch of students to like coastal cleanup, right? And they go pick up trash, and that's great, and like it's going to be good. But we know that there are other ways of community engagement where if we just send the students with no preparation, it might actually be more harmful than beneficial. And so we want to be sensitive to that. And we want to figure out like what training should we be providing the students before engaging, and how can we build long-lasting community partnerships so that it's not just we showed up for a weekend and then we disappeared, right? But so it's a sustained community partnership. We don't quite know how to do that yet. So if you have any thoughts, please let me know, because this is an area we're actively trying to figure out. It sounds like you are too, but we'd love to try to figure out ways to do this. Yeah, so sorry, short answer is I don't know, but I'd love to know the answer. And yeah, it's one of the reasons that we're moving slowly in that area, is that we want to do community engagement, but we want to make sure we're doing it in a way that really supports the community rather than just the helicopter in, helicopter out approach that is so easy for us to do.
Well, thank you. That is a good answer.
Oh, I don't know. I'd hope, right? At least like we're trying, but haven't quite got there is something. So
I think that piece is always a struggle. It's Chris, you have your hand up.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Siders, for the presentation, and it's good to hear you and meet you. And I have two questions. I guess the first is, do you have folks from the wind industry interacting and providing presentations about offshore wind? Is there room for that? And I guess I'll just leave that one first and then follow up with my second one, which is a little bit more I don't know, kind of open-ended.
yeah, thanks for that. So at the moment, we don't have representatives from the wind industry, but we have been partnering with CREW, the Center for Renewable Energy and Wind, at the university. So we do have representatives from that who are helping us think about how can we think more. And then the other thing is that my co-director, Dana Verone, is also is newly the director of the First State Marine Wind. So basically the wind turbine in Lewis. So we also have people thinking about onshore wind rather than offshore, but we do have people thinking about wind from that aspect anyway. But it's an area where we certainly could use more engagement, I think. Yeah, especially a few days about like what engagement could look like or how to do it. At the moment, I would say, I think we have more, well, maybe that's not true. So one of the programs I work with is the Energy and Environmental Policy program, and we have a lot more students in that program who are interested in energy than we have faculty to advise them. Partly it's because CREW is mostly based out of marine policy and we're at a different school, so it's a bit of some of it's a disciplinary silo that we need to break down at the university. But I think also we're just always looking for energy experts. So, to the extent that you're interested in that, I'm sure we have student interest in learning more about the industry.
I definitely would, and I'm just getting started in my new position, but what I've learned from it already is just so, I would call it overwhelmingly fascinating, that I would love to be able to share what I've learned so far with your students, because it's just so important and interesting that I think they would love to hear what's, from a global perspective, what's going on along the coasts all over the globe with wind. Is just, it's mind-boggling and very interesting. And from the environmental impacts to the economic benefits and everything, it's just a lot of great stuff to talk about. So maybe we could follow up and try to narrow down some opportunities that I can be helpful in the near future, and I would love to do that. And so my second question is, when I think about what is needed, particularly in Delaware with climate and, I'll lump in environmental policy, participation is so important in my mind, and have always observed that. And that I've been around it for a long time, environmental policy in Delaware, as I know a lot of other people on this call have. And it's pretty rare that young people participate. I've seen a little more in like the past year, some of the, like last year, the climate bill, there was a few young people that showed up, but policy is really, it's the dirty little secret is it's a numbers game, right? And so I guess my thinking as I was listening to you talk is, what are we doing at the university to prepare young people to provide effective engagement at the policy level, whether that's local, state, federal? How are we training them to be good advocates in a space that is, frankly, it's horrifying for a young person to enter? And those few brave ones that do it, they're amazing, but their numbers, I think, have the potential to be increased by an order of magnitude, you know, so it's not something that comes to a lot of people's mind right off the bat, but how does a university teach students to be advocates and bring their knowledge to the policy realm?
Yeah, this is a really great question. So, so this is an area, this is gonna be another one of those, I don't have the answer, but we are really actively trying to pursue this, which is, sorry if that's my answer to everyone tonight, but no, but this is a really great question. So we have had some success. For example, you know, we just had 3 graduates who ran successfully for office in New Delaware, or in Delaware State, right?
Wow.
For the House for the Representatives. So like, you know, the university is training leaders in this area, and one of them, right, was like in climate change classes and environmental justice class with me, and so I know is very passionate about these particular issues. But right now, that's kind of ad hoc. That's more based on the student than it is the particular training we're giving them to this area. So we are trying to figure out how do we do that. One answer for that is we have some new classes that we hope help. So we have a leadership certificate program, actually is it a minor as well, in the Biden School, and they are now offering advocacy courses. So we're hoping to get more students into the advocacy courses. It's something where longer term, maybe we try to pursue an environmental advocacy, but at the moment there's just a sort of advocacy general course. The other is I'm really excited about the new class that's coming out on local government and climate change, because I think there's a lot of students could engage at the local government level that don't. I half joke, but I'm half serious. Dee, I just heard you talking about the county level government here, but I'm half joking that at some point I want to just put a bunch of students in a bus and take them to a meeting, just that they sit in and see. Because I think a lot of them don't engage because they don't quite understand the process, or they're just too intimidated to figure out the process. And so I'm hoping that even if we could just start with our climate scholars and get more of them to start attending those meetings or paying attention to the agenda items, and get just them more familiar with the idea that this is a way they could engage, I think that might help them a lot. So I'm hoping that we can help them overcome some of those hurdles just by creating a little more familiarity. We haven't taken that step yet, but because like I said, we're trying to figure out if it's right to just sort of send a bunch of students to observe a meeting, or if we want to do some more preparation.
Well, let's talk so
beforehand.
we can strategize it a little better. But
Yeah. I don't want to just
absolutely.
send a whole bunch of students to your meeting, but
No, I have a whole bunch of questions for you and follow up. So yeah, let's talk.
Great, because this is the kind of thing where, and I don't know if we want to send them if it's better to send them to local or county or both, or just have these options. But I hope that there's a way of, even initially, if we just got them in to observe a couple of these meetings, I think that might help them see this as a venue to engage. We have had some students also engage in things like the Newcastle planning board for youth planning board. And so I think we're hoping to, this is when I talk about resources, some of the things we're hoping to spread the word on more on UD campus, right? To find opportunities like that, like, hey, there is such a board, you could also be a member. Have someone who served on that board tell the students what it's like, right? And provide that information so that we get more students who are thinking about applying, or engaging through those kind of venues. So if anyone knows of opportunities like that where students could apply or do stuff like that, we also want to sort of have that for internal to get more students engaged. So Chris, I don't have a great answer for how we do it yet, but it's something we are actively considering. How do we do this better, I think.
I just have to chime in here. I think it was a committee hearing in Dover, and Dee, it must have been some of your plastic-free Delaware kids. And there was one girl who, I don't remember if she said a whole lot, but she arrived in a dress made out of plastic bags. And it was really super effective. And, the idea that, legislators always say, oh, we want to hear from the youth. And, Delaware is so small and it's so easy to get to Dover, and, to really engage around a particular legislative action and, make a 2-minute presentation. So that would be way cool.
If I could jump in before John, sorry, but since it's timely, I have so much to follow up with you on Siders, but I wanted to make sure you're aware that, like Jill said, when we were working on the plastic bag legislation all through the 20 teens, finally got the first bill passed in 2019, but we had a whole bunch of kids of all ages from 5 years old to college students as advocates in Leg Hall. And we saw the power of that as the youth advocates, and they definitely helped us get the bill passed. So that's why we started our Youth Environmental Summit, which is YES, at YES, the acronym. And last year we were at Clayton Hall. That was the 3rd annual. So we're heading into the 4th annual. We'll be back at Clayton Hall. I just found out today that the University of Delaware is definitely going to be one of our sponsors, but we're also adding a college and career track this year. So this is just
Interesting.
for Delaware high school students, and it's free to them through our sponsorships. We make sure that it's totally free to them and their teacher advisors, but I definitely want to follow up with you and make you a part of it. And so we have a lot to talk about, but it's also could be a recruitment tool for you, because that's why we're adding this new college and career track to make sure high school kids know, okay, I'm interested in majoring in or focusing on the environment. What are those opportunities? What colleges can I go to that have these tracks? And what's my job prospects afterwards? Like, where can I go? How can I put that to work afterwards? So we want exhibitors that represent both green jobs in all their different varieties, and also colleges represented, for those kids that are interested in really delving in more deeply in their college career. So anyway, we have a lot to talk about. I don't want to take
No. I'd love to
tonight.
follow up, and I just realized I'm putting my email address for anyone who we've just mentioned following up on, but there's my email address, which is my last name at udel.edu. So it's pretty simple, but please do follow up on any of these conversations or conversations we haven't had yet, but should.
Thank you.
John, I think you are the next person with your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. My video is being a little weird, so I hope you can tolerate that. Yeah, I'm interested in this topic of how can this hub be important in the climate struggle we are in. We are in a struggle about climate policy here in Delaware at the state level, as you probably are totally aware of. I know you and Dustin, co-wrote an article recently about, or a statement about that. So I'm thinking about, how the hub can play an important role, and how the hub might help student organizations at the university step into that space. Whereas, I think they're a huge potential force. You think of the thousands and thousands of students, many of whom I'm sure are very concerned and interested, and kind of probably need help figuring out that, how do I do something? And so these groups probably need a little bit of leadership around, okay, how do we, do more than recycle, or something that is more on the personal side, but to think about policy and, having goals for climate, greenhouse gas reductions and electrification of transportation, the big issues that we're facing this year. So we need to get this, advanced clean cars program from California adopted. We need a climate solutions bill passed. You just talk some about, how you're able, I don't know if you're totally, as part of the university, you may have heavy weight on your options, but just, can you say anything?
Yeah, so this is really important. So I think this is another one of those, we're as a hub, we are not currently advocates. We are not currently taking on that. So I may decide personally to advocate for certain policy options or to comment on things. But I'm sort of doing that as myself rather than as the hub. And that's partly because we're also trying to navigate the nonpartisan or bipartisanness. This is a position that might shift in the future, but I think at the moment we're we're trying to enable students to be advocates, but not necessarily be an advocate as a hub. And that's kind of a fine line we're trying to walk, or we're still navigating that, I guess, is what I would say. So we definitely want to equip our students to do a lot, right? To do far more than, I mean, recycling is great, but what else can we do? This is also one reason we're really excited about the Office of Sustainability that's standing up on campus, is that we hope that that will also push for a lot more action at both the university level and in the community in terms of what can we push for. But there's a lot to be said for, the University of Delaware trying to take action on its own campus as a way, if nothing else, that's to like show commitment and to show that it can be done, right? So we'll see what we can accomplish on campus as well. Yeah, I think the advocacy role is one that we're still trying to decide where we can and cannot take action. Yes, and it's one reason we're thinking a lot about where our funding is going to come from, or where it does come from, and how we can be transparent about that and how we make decisions about that, right? We've decided to make some very clear steps. Like as a hub, I think we've officially decided this. Like we're not taking money from fossil fuel companies, but where else is the line, right? That line is not necessarily clear, and so trying to figure out how we're going to navigate those. So sorry, John, it's another one of those. We're thinking about it, but we don't have a clear answer to that yet. I just wanted to note, Richard, I think I saw your hand before, but not anymore. Did you?
Yeah. Can I, before, I
Oh, yeah.
think I saw Richard's hand too, but could one of you guys put, either John or you Siders, put that letter to the editor in the chat, maybe? Whenever,
Yes.
when you get to it, because that was, I've forgotten that. Thank you for mentioning that.
Well, yeah, I did have a question, and it got partially answered, which is why I took my hand down, but it's actually a little bit similar to John's question, but a little bit also kind of slanted toward the organization that I'm in, Plastic Free Delaware. We're trying to do some things on a statewide level to reduce plastic pollution. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize, and maybe some of our legislators don't realize, is just how big a role plastic plays in the climate change problem. Right now, I think plastic production in the United States is equivalent to, as far as greenhouse gas emissions, is equivalent to like 500 coal-fired power plants. So, and people don't seem to realize also how fast the plastic production business is growing. It's fed by the oil companies because all the plastics are made from fossil fuels, and they're building huge new plastic plants. There's a big one just going online in Pittsburgh, but they're building them all over the place. And I guess it's what the fossil fuel industry is thinking is their next step. If cars go electric, they can still, produce tons and tons of disposable plastic and use and make money from fossil fuel that way. So a lot of the fracked gas that is happening in Pennsylvania and other places, that's now going into plastic. And it's really a filthy business, and a lot of the plastic really isn't recyclable. We're trying to get rid of styrofoam right now, as from restaurants, takeout type things, styrofoam cups and clamshells and those kinds of things. Several other states have done that, including nearby states, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, and several others. And so we'd like to get the state of Delaware to pass a law. We want to try to get people from the restaurant industry on board with that, saying, okay, if they pass a law, then it's a level playing field because everybody has to get rid of styrofoam. So a way to do that, one idea is maybe we have a petition and we try to get all the restaurant people, or as many as possible, we try to get their input and have some of them sign on, and maybe they earn some sort of badge for being eco-friendly or something like that. But it might be something that maybe some of your students would be interested in doing. I think it would be a big step to help the climate change issue, the climate change problem, and also the plastic pollution problems. So don't know if you have any interest. If so, talk to Dee, because she's really the plastic-free Delaware person.
No, I think that's really interesting. So I was just noticing, I put Kelly Jacobs' information in the chat. She's everything I know about the connection between oil and plastic comes from Kelly. Kelly's a Pennsylvania native who's very interested in this exact connection, and so this I think will form the subject of her dissertation. Although I haven't seen her proposal yet, so but I think this will be her focus area. And I do think actually a number of our, I mean, everything from some of our scholars might be interested in seeing how they could get engaged in this actual advocacy and pushing for reform, right, either on campus. We're collaborating with our dining services, for example, and seeing what efforts they're making to try to go plastic free or think about more sustainable consumption patterns, but also how we could push Newark businesses to do something more, or statewide to do better. Even things like in the spring, I'm teaching a climate change policy class for undergraduates. So I'll have 40 students who will all be required to write a 2-page memo on a climate change solution, targeted to what could the governor do, or what could a state senator do, or something like that. And so, these kinds of options where the more I can give them ideas of like, hey, what should this look like, and have them go do research and think about those real options. Also, selfishly, would be fantastic for those students to think about that. But maybe it would be something that maybe there's a way to make it useful as well. So I'd love to think about that. So thank you for letting me know more about this initiative, because yeah, definitely want to hear more. And Dee, we're going to have a lot to talk about someday. So
if I could just maybe tag, sorry, Leslie, tag on to what Richard said. I think we need to get away from the mentality that recycling is the solution. The American global public actually has been fed this myth that recycling is the solution to all these trash and single-use plastic issues, and it's not. It's if in the reduce, reuse, repair, refuse, blah blah blah, recycle pyramid, recycle is the bottom part of the reverse pyramid. And beach cleanups are great. Absolutely, they're great. They're an on-ramp, sorry Chris, an on-ramp to getting people involved, but we need to do so much more than beach cleanups and recycling. So like Plastic Free Delaware really doesn't do we don't do beach cleanups. We've never hosted a beach cleanup. We've never organized one. We try to shy away from the word recycling. We touch on it every once in a while, but we really try to address the root causes of single-use plastic pollution, and trying to aim for zero waste and the reduction of single-use plastics. And I partly mentioned that just to pick up on what Richard said, because you're also in that regard, in that realm, competing with an EPA funded department at the University of Delaware that is, looking for advanced solutions to plastic. And it's called the Center for Plastics Innovation at the university. And people that are working in that realm are trying to basically turn plastic back into fuel. And we just feel, at least I personally do feel, that that's heading in the wrong direction when it comes to single-use plastics. And so anyway, we could definitely talk for a long time, I'm sure, but you're kind of
I think it's really important
competing against that department at the university.
Well, I think I can say that the hub is taking a yes and approach to all of these solutions, right? We need less consumption, and we need recycling, and we probably need some innovation to get rid of the plastics we do have, right? And so, which I don't know enough about the plastics issue to have a very strong stance on that. I just mean as a general approach, I think the hub is trying to take a yes and, yeah, like yes, we need to do this, and we need to do these other things, and we need to do these other things, and so trying not to compete with the other centers that are on campus, but just trying to point out there is no silver bullet, and so we need multiple approaches to be able to address these issues.
Yeah. I didn't mean you were literally competing, but I
like. Oh yeah. No.
You're operating in parallel universes in a way.
Absolutely.
silver buckshot, I think is the
Yeah,
mine.
yeah.
The silver bullet, silver buckshot. So Leslie Purcell, I think have your hand up, please.
Yeah, hi. I'm actually in California now. I'm in my car, so I'm not putting my video on, but I just wanted to bring up a couple things. And yes, we have banned styrofoam in various parts, and I think the whole state now, and it has made it so much better. I mean, you still find a little bit of styrofoam every now and then, but compared to what it used to be, it is so much better. So I encourage that. And the other big issue I wanted to bring up, and I know it's very complicated with all the levels of government and entities doing different kinds of policy and work. Well, I have a friend who's just about to come back from the COP27, and she's been working on militarism and the environment and climate change. And apparently the military emissions are not part of the calculation, and it's really kind of shocking because they're huge and there's a lot of pollution and, you know, toxic stuff, as well as just the greenhouse gas and the, you know, effects on temperature and climate change that are not part of what's calculated. And it's a huge hole in what we're dealing with. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's really touchy and very difficult to get a handle on, but you know, I just wanted to put it out there, as well as the amount of money that's spent on those things. It could be put to more beneficial uses as far as many of us are concerned. So thank you.
No, it's an interesting one, and I mean, right, you all heard in my bio, like I actually started working on climate change issues because of the Navy. The Navy saw a person who had a bio degree and a law degree, didn't know what to do with me, so they stuck me in the environmental office, where we happened to have leadership who was very interested in climate change at the time, and that's when I started working on climate change. So, you know, so it was interesting that, so my first introduction to like climate change policy and thinking about climate change, and you know, was the Navy, thinking about how it wanted to reduce its fossil fuel consumption, thinking about how it wanted to be more right and pursue more renewables, how it wanted more sea level rise safe bases, how it wanted to think about an opening Arctic, how it wants to prepare for more humanitarian aid disasters. So I think I had an unusual introduction to climate change because of that. And I think that there's, but as a result, I recognize that there's a huge opportunity for the military to lead in this area, not only to take action, but really to lead. And it's not an active area of my research portfolio these days. I sort of wish it were, but 24 hours in a day haven't left enough time to do all the things I wish were in my research portfolio. And I'm not aware of anyone on campus who's working directly in that sector, which is unfortunate as well, because I do think you're right that there's huge potential for action to be there if we could, you know, or if the military had that appetite. And maybe on the positive side, I do think that there are some leaders in the military who are taking a lot of action and who are trying to drive that forward. So we'll, you know, but yeah, no, it could be a real force for change, or as the Navy used to call itself, at least, it could be a real force for good, right? If it wanted to take on this action area.
Thank you. Greg, you have your hand up.
Yeah, sort of on that same topic of difficult areas to solve. Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin, the whole blockchain. I mean,
Yeah.
I was amazed and shocked by the amount of energy that is expended in mining Bitcoins and other blockchain elements, right? NFTs, whatever. I mean, one of the numbers I heard that I'm not sure I believe yet is that 1% of all the energy expended is by making Bitcoins. Very hard to believe, don't you know, I believe that one. But the one I heard recently was that if you took all the energy that a country like Argentina uses, that's the same as mining Bitcoins. So I'm wondering, I mean, obviously, once you use the energy that's sustainable, then that becomes sort of a non-problem. But in the interim, 60 or 70% of what they're using is fossil-based.
Mhm.
So I don't know how to go about changing what they're doing or how they're doing it or whatever, but maybe someone ought to look at it. I don't know.
And that's fascinating. And I think so two things. One is I think that ties really nicely back to Clem's point originally about engaging the business community, right? How do you think about the full chain of sort of, sustainability and where you're getting the energy from and what it does for that. So I think that's a fascinating area to look at. Again, I'm not sure if we have faculty on campus who are looking particularly at that area, but I will find out because it is a really interesting area. The area that is somewhat related that I am very interested in is actually the video game industry and climate change for a variety of reasons. So one is that the United Nations has a Playing for the Planet initiative because they estimate that 3 billion people on the planet play video games. And so one of the things is similar to Bitcoin, right? Like a lot of the energy consumption is because running computers is really energy intensive. And so if you have whole industries like video games that are running things like Xbox, PlayStation consoles, you may have noticed from my background, I'm something of a geek. So this is an area that I'm personally very interested in. Is like, I think our household alone is probably consuming way too much energy on like 3 Xbox consoles running it simultaneously at the same house. Anyway, sorry for that overshare. So very interested in this. So how do you think about an industry that is consuming, right, like massive amounts of energy, and then you think about the like the rare earth materials and things that go into designing computers, right? They're building these really intensive units, and gaming consoles and computers are even more energy intensive often than regular computers. So this is a big issue from a sustainability side. It's also a really interesting one to get into because from like a fiction side and us thinking about how narratives and how you shape people's perceptions. As an example of this, there was a recent redesign of a game from my childhood came out. It's Final Fantasy, like huge, international conglomeration of video games. Anyway, they came out with a redesign of this game where you spend like 100 and some hours as an eco-terrorist. Okay, so you join an eco-terrorist group, and as your character, you run around and you blow up all the factories that are harming the planet. And at the end of the day, you destroy humanity, and that's the good ending. And so I think this is fascinating from like a storytelling perspective, right? There's a new game that was coming out with another remake. It's an assassination game. At least for a while, the plotline that they were pitching was that you were going to be assassinating fossil fuel company CEOs. Now that's a really interesting commentary, right? On like who is an acceptable target. There's all kinds of dystopian fiction, shows that are coming out now based on climate change issues. But there are also video games about environmental justice. So there's a Sim City, like you create a whole civilization, but also one where you engage with a community. It's called Eco Lifestyle. You're trying to convince a community to adopt solar panels, and you have to go around and convince local officials or local people to vote for a bond measure to put in your renewable energy. And as a video game, I find that fascinating, right? Or thinking about urban planning, and there's all kinds of video games coming out now on, well, if you build your homes too close to the river, then there's a random chance that a tsunami will destroy them. And what does that mean for you winning the game? So I find this fascinating from a business model of how do you think about the energy consumption? How do you think about sustainability of the industry, right? And that's where the UN is heading with its Playing for the Planet initiative. But then also and it's partly because UD has a very strong eco-criticism, environmental humanities field department in the English department, and we also have a video game major and design major. And so I want to bring together the environmental critics, the environmental humanities critics, the video game design majors, and the sustainability people from the Lerner School of Business, and say, like, let's have a big conversation about the video game industry and how it influences people's perceptions about, because I think so many of our students play video games, whether they admit it or not, right? And so, but they're learning things. Like there's good research on climate fiction books, right? That reading climate fiction books can change your perception about climate change, can change your perception about what's fair, what's just, what's environmental justice. It can change your perception about environmental migrants. It can change your perception about a lot of issues. So if reading a book can do that, I have a feeling that a video game can do that too. But this would be a fascinating area to get more research, right? Or to think about, and to think about how we could use it as a way to, because one of the big things I want the hub to do is I really want the hub to do cutting edge research and to engage in our community to try to solve the climate crisis. But along the way, I'd really like to try to make it fun if we can. And this goes back to this idea of climate change being really depressing, right? And it is. Also, there's like huge opportunity to try to make it hopeful and optimistic. And like we're creating a collage wall on the Climate Hub space right now sort of the future could be. And we're trying to put up a whole bunch of images of the future, some of which are dystopian, but the majority of which are varieties of ways of thinking about a better future. Because we really want our students to think about not just, oh, it's dystopia, forever, right? But what could it be? Because we want to solve the crisis not just to maintain what we have today, right? We want to solve the climate crisis because we want something better for the future. So anyway, so sorry, this is my soapbox rant, but like I get to talk about video games, I will take it. But I think there's some opportunity here to engage students using video games as a way to get a lot of students engaged who wouldn't necessarily want to sign up for climate change, right? They might think, oh, that's too depressing, or that's not my area, or something. But heck yeah, I'd sign up for a video game design competition, or heck yeah, I'd want to go hear about this new game that's coming out. And by the way, hear about climate change and all those other issues. I use video games now to teach in class because I want students to use it to think about some of the issues that they're thinking about with sustainability. We have a climate scholars phone game running right now, where the different scholars are all islands on a little planet, and we're all trying to be sustainable, but also grow our economies. And I think the fun thing is that you can support your neighbors or the other islands, or you can sabotage them. And so it becomes a fun game around the climate scholars to see if we can we as climate scholars maintain a balanced ecosystem? And so far the answer is not quite. But we're working at it. So I think it'd be anyway, sorry, this is a bit far from Bitcoin. But I think the idea about the energy consumption is really fascinating. And I think it opens up to a lot of other really interesting interdisciplinary conversations. Sorry, I'll try to tie it back to your question at the end there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Siders, you mentioned environmental justice, and what's the hub doing to interface there?
Yeah, so this is another one of those, we're working on it, issues. So
Aren't
one
we
is that, yeah, well, it's a big issue, right? So a couple things. So we are part of a Denon, with Denon has an environmental justice working group. So we are part of that, and we're trying to do more in that space. This is also an area where we're trying to think of other creative ways we can engage. I teach a class on environmental justice and disaster. We have several new classes and on campus that are teaching students explicitly about environmental justice. Also trying to incorporate it into more classes, right? Because it's a limited set of students who self-select into an environmental justice course, right? So we want more students who maybe wouldn't take that specific course to still get an introduction to the idea. And so we're trying to get it into more classes. We're also trying to find ways to get better representation on our working group and our partner board. So this is one of those areas where I talk about growing our partners board, right? We recognize that we do not have enough community voices and we do not have enough diverse voices on our partner board right now. And we are working to try to address that. And we don't have a perfect answer for it yet. Thank you, Beth, for putting in Denon, the explanation there. Sorry.
Thank you, because that was my question.
Yep, nope, apologies, acronym soup. Yeah, so we're working with Denon because Denon and the hub overlap. And so one of the things we're trying to do is to make sure that overlap, I don't know, is to the benefit of both rather than us duplicating efforts. so trying to do that. But yeah, and then the other thing, so when we think about environmental justice, it's one of the reasons we want to think very carefully about our community engagement projects as well, is that when we engage the community, ideally we want to engage in community projects that will help advance environmental justice, or at least not make things worse. And so that's one of the reasons, again, we're trying to think very carefully about how we do that, right, in a beneficial way. And then the other thing is that we're partnering with other efforts, right, at the state level or other organizations who are trying to do environmental justice things. So for example, some of the state agencies right now that are trying to map environmental justice communities in response to the White House's Environmental Justice 40 or the Justice 40 initiative to spend money in environmental justice communities. The states now need to figure out who those communities are to try to spend that money. So we're trying to help engage in some of those conversations about how do you think about that in a nuanced way. I don't know that we're going to have the answer, but at least trying to do that. I think there's a lot more we could be doing in this space. And it's an area I think we're trying to figure out what the right place to engage is. I should say with all of this, we really want to do a lot more. Right now, I should be really clear that the hub is me and Dana part-time and one business administrator. Like that's it, that's the hub. When I talk about the hub, like yes, we have 150 faculty who are at the university, but when it comes down to like having the meetings or running the things or doing the things, like you're talking about 1.5 people's time. So there's a lot of things on the we want to do list that just haven't quite percolated up yet, but we hope that they will. Yeah. I don't mean to excuse it, just I hope it will give you a reason to give us some patience in terms of figuring these things out.
Renee, is that a raised hand?
It is. I have a question. Do you, with your environmental kids group, are you the point person there?
So for the climate scholars, you can't reach out to me, but you can also reach out to Dana Verone, and I will put her email in the chat right now. She is the official advisor for all the climate scholars.
Because I was thinking about, I was a Montessori teacher, 4th and 6th grade. So I'm always like distilling things down to understanding at that level. And I was thinking about TikTok and thinking about plastic-free Delaware and thinking about eat this, not that, and thinking a good competition might be use this, not that. And they could do it on levels where they dealt with different generations for what their little 1-minute TikTok would be to teach some change element that would be fun and easy and fast. And anyway.
No, that's a really interesting idea, to use the students as a 1-minute like teachable moment instead of a here's my research. Yeah. No, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, no, I think about that. Yeah. No, I think we are in the process of trying to get approved to have a social media presence. So we don't currently have Twitter, LinkedIn, et cetera, but we are in the process of trying to get approved to do that. Because you can imagine the university, I don't know, has a communications chain and branding things they want to maintain. And I think they look at me and they're not quite sure I'm responsible enough to handle it. So we're working on that, I guess.
I've been trying to nag in a lot of places that we need to, as an environmental justice community, have a community bulletin board where people could join in and see everything that's on the calendar instead of having to go to Sierra Club or having to go to Interfaith Power and Light or having to go to the state climate plan or having to go to UD. I mean, if it was and like I'm 73 and I can't be that person who works on that technology because I don't know how to do it. And I keep talking to church and saying, listen, you guys, we need to find a graduate student who we can pay something to pull this stuff together for church and then expand it to the rest of the environmental justice community. That's my dream right now, because I've connected with so many interesting things and learned so many interesting things during the pandemic. But it's like, like a kid in a candy store. You don't know exactly what you're picking up. But if there was an opportunity to put it in one place, I think we would all be better served if we had. So
no, I think that's a really interesting. So I will say that right now we're trying to figure out the logistics of how to do that internally in UD.
Well, that's what I heard.
But yeah, but I love the idea of trying to do it even more community wide, because I do think there's a lot of areas where maybe we're duplicating efforts, right? Or and then not dividing, but like, you probably only want to attend so many webinars a week.
Hacking
right?
up
So
the audience.
How
That's
could
what
we?
we're doing.
No. Yeah. So I know I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think it's the kind of thing that I don't know. I'm making notes about all of your suggestions here, but I'm adding it onto the list of the suggestions because I think that's a really interesting one. I don't know if I want to say at the hub. I mean, maybe we're the right place to do that, or maybe not. But I think that's a really interesting idea we want to look into.
Maybe there's a working group that would grow out of that would include graduate students who are interested in both communication and entertainment and climate, who would go, this would be fun. This one time would be fun. Or this.
No, I think that's a really interesting. Yeah.
So,
or do we have a computer science student who'd write some script to just automate it, right? I mean, it'd be fascinating to see. Yeah.
And my experience is always that often kids wait for the best option, what they're going to choose to do. So I don't know what's going to happen until the last minute from my 19-year-old granddaughter, right? Is she really going to come? What does she want to do? Is something better going to come up? So, maybe that's what it's called. The something better's coming up. What do you want to do? But anyway.
Yeah, well, no, I think, and that's actually, For example, there's a student group now called the the Student Sustainability Alliance, and it's an umbrella organization for all the environmental student groups on campus to try and do this just among the student groups, right? And so it's fascinating to see the umbrella organizations we create to try to coordinate, and then I don't know, yeah. Eventually we'll need an even larger umbrella to try to keep them all organized. But no, I think it's a fantastic idea, because I think you're right. The more we could align some of these efforts, the more we can. It's one of the reasons, for example, like we talked about holding sort of more social events or happy hours or tea and cookies events in the evening to try to get community. It's one of the reasons that, at least with all of your permission, I'm trying to encourage more UD people to come here instead, rather than us recreating that right somewhere else, because I think there's a lot of benefit for us to try to use what exists and build on that community rather than creating a separate community to the extent we can.
Siders, would there be a topic that would be particularly interesting to them that would be, I mean, you could think about this, that, might, draw people? Because I mean, this, I'm sure there are a lot of other organizations, but this is pretty easy, pretty low key. And, we were, hoping, some students would come. Is there something would, other than we could do a big video game presentation or something?
Yeah, let me think about it. I'm not sure what okay. So I will say that this being Thanksgiving week, I think is one reason the student representation is probably not as high. Just
Yeah.
we don't have classes, so a lot of them are, on vacation or off home, things like that. I think the students we have are always interested in ways to get involved. So they're always interested in, like, a lot of things you all mentioned, even in your introductions, right? Or understanding the organizations who are working in this space, right? Because many of them are thinking about what do potential career paths look like in this area, right? So knowing what the organizations are, who's doing what, that there are opportunities to get involved, I think is something they'd be very interested in. So we're going to keep encouraging both the graduate students and the undergraduates to, to come to some of these, as well as the faculty, right? To think about this, because I think there are, I think we as at the university could get a lot out of it, of hearing more about what you all are doing. I mean, I have like 3 pages of notes already on things I need to follow up about and learn about more from the fantastic work you all are doing that I want to learn more about. So yeah, Jill, I don't know. I'll think about a particular topic, but I don't have
I just
anything
thought I'd throw that out as
No, I appreciate it.
something. Where do you get your funding?
Well, yeah, no, I think I was supposed to make a pitch tonight. So we are, so our initial 2 years were funded by the Unidel Foundation. So we got a grant to sort of kickstart us from the Unidel Foundation. We also have, the reason we are the Gerard Jane Mangone Center Hub is that the Mangone Hub used to be marine policy, and now it is, the family has generously allowed that gift to be used for climate policy as well. So we have some funding from there. We also receive some funding from First State Marine and Wind. So we have sort of a quilt patchwork at the moment, but it's something we're actively trying to figure out more sustainably, right? So we have sort of guaranteed funding for the next year or two, but we're trying to figure that out, and we're trying to fund particular initiatives. And I'm pretty sure I was supposed to make a pitch today about our Giving Tuesday event, which I don't think I did. I'm trying to find the link right now because I should have had that up here right now. So we also do a lot of fundraising through the university, through Giving Tuesday, through in the spring, the I Heart UD Day, where we ask for donations from the community members, from students, parents, things like that to help us fund particular initiatives on campus. But yeah, our funding is an area we're looking for. Every center is always looking for more money, right? Because more money, we can do more things. So it's one of those, we have big dreams about someday when we have infinite funds, right? And we will fund interdisciplinary students to work on particular topics. And someday we will fund interns to write briefs that support policy initiatives at the legislature. And someday we will, provide funds for particular classes on climate advocacy training. And someday, right, someday we'll do all of these things. And we'll get there. It's just going to take us a few years to get there eventually.
Lots of growth potential. Lots of growth potential.
Well, unless you all solve climate change in the next few, I think we're going to be okay. Yes,
Yeah.
in the next few minutes. Yes, I like that optimism. So there's my link to the Giving Tuesday funding page. Anyone who is interested in helping support our students and activities, or sending students to an 8th through 12th grade eco camp in the spring, we'd be very grateful if you'd help us spread the word about this. And thank you for the reminder that I was supposed to mention that today.